The following program was produced by an independent community producer. The opinions expressed do not necessarily reflect those of the ECAT staff or board of directors.
So yeah, what I found online was this little blurb I'm going to read. Welcome, Lisa Braxton, tonight for her second visit here with us in Queesit House. Lisa is the author of the novel The Talking Drum, winner of a 2021 Independent Publisher Book Awards Gold Medal, overall winner of Shelf Unbound Book Review Magazine's 2020 Independently Published Book Award, winner of a 2020 Outstanding Literary Award from the Association of Black Journalists, and a finalist for the International Book Awards, among other things. There was a lot more out there that I found about you. Lots of other awards. All good, all wonderful. This is just a very abbreviated list of accomplishments. You are an Emmy-nominated former news anchor.
Yes.
An essayist and short story writer. Lisa is on the executive board of the Writers' Room of Boston, a writing instructor at Grub Street, Boston, and president of the Greater Boston section of the National Council of Negro Women. Lisa is a member of the Psi Omega chapter of Alpha Kappa Alpha sorority. And she holds an MFA and a Master of Science, published in magazines, books, journals, and so much more. So I don't want to give it all away. I'm going to turn it over to Priscilla.
Well, before we get started, I would like to say, Dana, thank you. Thank you for the introduction. And I'd like to thank Ames Free Library and Queesit House for hosting me once again. And if I may give a plug for independent bookstores, it's just so important that we support our independent bookstores because they're mom and pop shops like the one here, a Paperback Junction, and other bookstores, because they help us have community. And we can go there and support them and meet up with our friends, have a coffee. It's so important in this day and age when so many businesses don't survive that we support our independent bookstores. So thank you. Thank you for that. And thank you for being here as well, Priscilla.
Well, thank you. My name is Priscilla Almquist Olsen, and I have had the great pleasure of interviewing Lisa Braxton about her first book, The Talking Drum. And now we have a second book. All I can think of is Raindrops.
Dancing between.
Dancing. I have to see you dancing, Lisa. Dancing Between the Raindrops. And what occurred to me was how you have reconnected with your family, because the first book, most of the topic, most of the book and the plot was really about your parents' experience and you and your sister Sylvia. Isn't that right?
Yes, yes.
And how did you come about creating this book too? Dancing Between the Raindrops.
I've been, as Dana mentioned, writing essays and many other things for quite some time. And I really enjoy, besides writing fiction, I enjoy writing personal essays. And by the time that my mother became sick, she was the first one who became noticeable. No, my father was actually pretty sick too with dementia and Parkinson's, but they were not diagnosed at that time. But 2018, after Thanksgiving dinner, we were all in the basement of the family home. That's where we have our recreation area. And we were playing cards, and all of a sudden, Mom just fell out. And we called 911, and at the hospital they said, well, she just hasn't had enough water with her medication. She's dehydrated. But fast forwarding, we found out that she had ovarian cancer. So I always felt like my sister and I, our family, the four of us, had a privileged life, because as we got into our teens and our later years, my parents, some of their peers, some of their friends passed away. And we would go to these funerals and we're all holding hands. Now I think, well, thank goodness the four of us, we're still intact. And then when my parents got into their 40s and 50s, more of their friends would drop off. And I'm like, wow, it's still the four of us. And I thought, wow, we're living a charmed life. I hope it lasts forever. I hope that the four of us will just pass away at the same time. So then when my mother got sick, my father's dementia got worse. To deal with the grieving process before they passed away, I began writing more essays, just reminiscing on, how Dad. My father taught me to ride a bicycle, and he ran with me and pushed the bike up every time I would lose my balance. I would think about those things that happened, and now he was so frail. Every time he would walk down the stairs, everybody would hold their breath. It was that bad. So I was writing all these essays, and I was also going to grief share at my church and some grieving classes online. But I found that reading about other people's grieving experiences really was soothing and really comforting. And I had about 70 pages worth of essays, and I thought, well, maybe what I've written can be helpful or comforting to other people. And I contacted some small presses, 7 or 8 small presses, just to get us started with some samples. And Sea Crow Press on Cape Cod contacted me. And what I liked about them is they are a women's press. And my first book was published by a women's press in Toronto. So women's press, and she said, I like your style, I like what you're saying, but we can't publish I'll publish this unless you have about at least 100 pages. We don't bind anything unless it has about 100 pages. So that was about August. And so she drew up a contract, and I said, okay, I'll have more to you by the end of the year. And I find I do better if I have a fire under my butt. So I just thought about different things that happened with Mom and Dad, and I try to be creative with, if you take a look at the book, I had a crossword puzzle and it goes through the intervention we did with Dad. Dad, you could not open another business at the age of 87 and just go into a store and open it. It won't work that way. So I continued writing, and my sister is more of a photographer, and I'm the writer. And for both our parents' funerals, I wrote, and she archived all the photos, family photos. So I said to Sylvia, send me all the photos, and we have interspersed that in the book. The book came out officially on Tax Day, April 15th, and it's doing well so far. And that's the origin. That's the origin of it.
Your parents were so proud of you when you produced the first book, The Talking Drum. And how do you think they would feel now if they were here with you?
A few people have asked me that, and I think that my mother would be surprised. She was rather shy, and she would probably say, why would anybody be interested in our stories? And my father, he was more confident, Mr. Businessman, and he would probably say, oh, that's good, that's nice. I think that he would not be surprised, he'd be pleased, and they would both tell me, how proud they are. But I think my mother would be very puzzled that people would be interested in their stories, because they had very humble beginnings, and their stories, like a lot of people's stories, you have humble beginnings, and you work your way up to something, and you make your mark in society, like all of us do. But they would probably think, well, we just had ordinary lives, so they'd be surprised. My mother would be.
Well, and your mother was a writer, wasn't she? And because of her humble beginnings and her circumstances, she was not able to pursue that dream. And so you have done that for her, haven't you?
Yes, my mother had some very interesting stories she would tell us as a family. And I just felt like my mother didn't have the voice to do that, to the voice, meaning the confidence to put her thoughts down on paper. I recall that when every year, my parents and my sister and I would leave Connecticut, our home state, and go down to Virginia for homecoming, because that's where Mom and Dad were from. We would go to Dad's church and spend the day, meet all the family, spend several days there. But as we would ride down I-95, I would say by the time we got to maybe the Jersey Turnpike or a little bit further, it was as if they were back in time, and they would start reminiscing in not a good way, but they were in a very angry, upset way about what they went through with Jim Crow, and having to go to the back of the bus to get on the bus, and having people give them, Caucasian individuals give my mom these, the stale cookies, and my grandmother's saying, well, please take this cookie and say thank you. And mom is like, she's like, oh, this, is hard as a rock. You have to be nice, not being able to look a white person in the eye when you walk down the street. You have to get off the sidewalk. All of those things, all those stories, it was like they were bleeding them out as we got closer and closer and closer to Virginia. So there were so many stories. One story that was interesting is my mother's stepdad got mad at the landlord and burned down their house in Virginia. And my mother remembers as a toddler being on the run, she and her siblings on the run from the sheriff's department and having to cross over a bridge. And every time in Connecticut we go over a bridge, mom would start hyperventilating. And my aunt also, they remembered that, and then they had to sleep on cardboard, because back then in Virginia at least, you could just go into a house that people had vacated and just live there and no one would know. And so mom remembers as a baby or a child being in a cardboard box, her mother fixing soup or something, because they were on the run from the sheriff's department. The sheriff finally caught up with her stepdad, and he went to jail. But those stories are just so rich and so interesting, and she didn't have the confidence to really push that.
But they had the confidence to move from that area, which was filled with racism and hate and prejudice, to Connecticut.
Yes. My parents got married in my great-grandmother's living room, and my uncle swung around in front of the house as soon as the ceremony was over, and they drove straight to Connecticut. And they were happy to get out, because they didn't have the connections. They didn't have money or connections, so they knew they couldn't really do much beyond working in the factory, which is fine, but they couldn't get so far in Virginia. So they came north.
Your parents did get to Connecticut, actually, I think your father did work for a short period of time in a factory.
Actually, 16 years at General Electric.
Oh, he was?
Yes.
Okay. So when did he open the exclusive men's store?
That was 1969. My parents had talked about it for quite some time. My mother was not in favor of it because she felt my father was not hard-edged enough to run a business. I do recall us going to some of the men's clothing stores in the area, and there was one in particular, and my father would go in and get pointers from the other business owners on how to run a business. So despite my mother's misgivings, they did open a clothing store.
And they did very well.
Yes, they did very well, but mom was right. Dad was a softie, and they could have done much better, made much more money if they had, if he had listened to mom. So at some point they owned the business together, and I think that I observed them working together, and I could see where it can be hard for a husband and wife to work together, especially if they have different approaches to running a business. So eventually mom left the store and she went to get her bachelor's degree, and she had her own job doing something else. Mm-hmm. But the store stayed open from 1969 to the early 2000s.
Yeah. And your mother was quite a bit older when she went back to school and got her degree, isn't that right?
I was 16 when mom went to college, so I would say yes. She was in her 30s. She was in her late 30s, I think, okay. Or maybe 40. I don't know.
She's the oldest one in the room.
Yeah.
Now, one of the scenes that you describe is so dramatic and traumatic and very poignant. And that is when they were looking for a home, a nice house in the suburbs. And the realtor showed them this home, and they loved it. It had so many bedrooms for everybody and just a lovely neighborhood. And when they came out of that house, what did they see?
Well, we came out of the house. My father was carrying my sister, who was, baby in diaper pants, as I remember. He's carrying her. I'm walking out with mom. All four of us walk out. And all the way down the whole street, all the people, this is suburban Fairfield County, upscale Fairfield County, everybody, there was all the people, homeowners, were standing at the front of their yard looking at us like this. And at that point, I had no idea what that meant. And I was like, that's interesting, but I never forgot it. And we got in the car, and my dad leans over to my mother and says, they don't want us here, do they? And she's like, no. And I never forgot that, but as I got older, I understood what it meant. At the time I didn't, but later on I understood what that meant. And they looked at houses, I mean, they looked for quite some time, but they never moved. And I think that may have been one piece of why. Because my mother told me later on that they were afraid that my sister and I would be mistreated there. And that's one reason why they didn't. They liked that house a lot, but that's one reason why they didn't move there.
I see, yeah. And you would have been the first Black family in that neighborhood and perhaps in the schools that you and Sylvia would attend.
Most likely at that point in the, I think, late 60s, yes. At that point, yes, we would have been. And that would have been tough. I know I wouldn't have been prepared for that. I had no clue about those things back then.
Well, you know what's amazing to me, Lisa, is that your memory is so crystal clear. You were just 6 years old and describing some scenes in this wonderful book, Dancing Between the Raindrops. How is it that you were able to recall so many scenes, good ones, bad ones, melancholy ones?
I think that if there are some things that happen in your life that just make such an impression on you, and I think maybe you're thinking about the situation at the water fountain at my school, Zion Lutheran School. I love that school. I was there from kindergarten through 8th grade. And we were getting water after chapel. I think it was after chapel. And one classmate, she says, I wish all the Black people would go back to Africa. And I was like, and the funny thing is my friend, a friend of mine, we keep in touch. She's in Texas. She remembers that too. I mean, she still remembers that also. So I think there's some things that happen. It doesn't matter how far back they are. You don't forget. They just make, I was like, what? And I was like, why would anybody say that? I'm not from Africa. I mean, it was like, I know my parents told me that I had African ancestry. My mother had told me a lot that, that our ancestors had been slaves in Virginia and they had to work, they didn't get paid, it was horrible. But I was like, I haven't been there before. Why would she say that's a weird thing to say? And because I didn't have the context of society at that point.
So there came a time, though, when you realized how bitter that was, that statement. Yeah, and then wasn't it true that you were very close friends with somebody who also made a racial remark to you? And then you continued to be friends afterwards?
I think that may be the situation at the water fountain.
Okay.
Because I still, I was about to say her name. We still keep in contact on just likes on Facebook. So I still see, and the funny thing is every time we respond to something, I think about that incident. Every time I see her, respond to something about our class, it's the first thing I think that she said that. And then my parents, that evening after school, they said most likely that she heard her parents say that, and she's just mimicking what they said. And I was, as a very naive little child, thinking, I've seen the parents at the PTL meetings. They seem very nice. Why would they say something like that? So it was, that one of those experiences. Even though I was very young, you do not forget. You don't.
What impact did some of those experiences have on you in your teen years?
I don't know. I don't know. I will say that I'm sure that was part of my decision to go to a historically Black university. Mm-hmm. I went to Hampton University in Virginia, and I said it might be nice, refreshing to have 4 years where I'm one of the many as opposed to one of the few. And I'm sure those incidents played into my decision to go to a HBCU.
Yeah, and your sister Sylvia went to a state school, right?
No. My sister went to my college.
Oh, she did?
My sister followed in my footsteps. So if she sees this, I'm sure she'll be happy, Sylvia, that I'm telling everyone how you followed in my footsteps. Okay? And majored in my major and lived in the dorm I lived in. So, hey.
What did you major in at college?
Oh, mass media. Communications, basically.
Right. Yeah. And so that led you to journalism. Was it paper journalism, print journalism at first, and then television later?
I liked everything. I couldn't decide what I wanted. Back then, things were so siloed, but I worked at a radio station in my hometown for 1 year, then at a newspaper in Richmond for 3.5 years. Then I went into publishing at a nonprofit, and then I went back to grad school for broadcasting at Northwestern, worked in TV for 9 years, and then I went into nonprofit work. And that's about the time that I had the energy and the time to actually start writing my books, my short stories and essays and books.
And are some of those short stories and essays included in this book?
Essays. Some of the essays are in this book, yes.
Now, what impact did that college have on your writing, for example, and your choice of topics?
We really just learned the basics of, I was editor of the college newspaper.
Of course.
So learning how to run a deadline. I was also on the radio station doing news announcing, and back then we had the albums. We don't have disc and album. We play streaming now, but we had the 45s and the record albums. I would play those. I was a DJ on the college radio station.
We do remember those, don't we? And there are some in this room who remember the 33s too.
Or maybe the 78s, possibly. Just kidding.
So, what did you enjoy most about those early years?
That I got to experiment with all kinds of media that we did. We had a TV studio, so we got to do television, radio, newspaper, that I got to try out everything. And I loved being my college campus was beautiful. And being that we could sit on the waterfront and study or spend time with your friends. But also my parents were from Virginia, so I got to spend time with my grandmother, when before it was always just that once a year for homecoming. So being in college in Virginia had its benefits also on a personal level. Getting to be with my cousins and my grandparents was very nice.
Wonderful. And so which did you prefer? Did you prefer the print media, or did you like being on television?
I think I'm more comfortable with print. TV was a challenge for me. It's we had to write our scripts, but we also had to present and go out and do stories under deadlines. So there was a lot of pressure, more pressure, I would say, than with the newspaper reporting.
Lisa, you're so articulate, and you don't sprinkle your sentences with
Oh, okay. I'm not sure if I do or not, but okay.
So you must be really, must have been a great television anchor, don't you think, everybody? Yeah. And because today we're experiencing that wonderful presentation that you're giving. Just, you present so well, you're so articulate, your choice of words, and the book is beautifully written.
Well, thank you.
It's just beautifully written. The prose is wonderful. And the other thing is, it takes talent. I used to teach creative writing. Not that I'm an expert, but you integrate the prose with dialogue very effectively.
Oh, good.
And
good.
That's sometimes very difficult to do, I think.
I'm wondering, do we have any questions from the audience? Any questions?
Thank you. I didn't, although we've known each other a short while, I didn't realize you had that television experience. I'd be curious to find out a little bit more about it. What did that consist of?
Well, I began in small market television. Champaign, Illinois, in a farming community. And I was there for 2.5 years doing news anchoring and reporting. A lot of the stories were about corn. Corn is very big. They're corn and soybeans. So we did a story about the drought that year. And I would go out into the farm field with the farmers or the agriculture department, and they would have a measuring stick. Oh, gee, this corn is only this big. We know it's going to be really bad. Or we're looking for that child who got lost in the cornfield. Or the Sweet Corn Festival. It was also the Abraham Lincoln Impersonators Convention, which I covered, because I had no idea there were all these people who are reenactors, and they come into Springfield, Illinois, once a year, and they have the vendors with the Mary Todd's, the skirt and the bonnet and the and they take classes on how to speak like Lincoln, how to do the Lincoln Douglas debate, how to dress, the stove top hat, all that stuff. So most of my stories, the Sweet Corn Festival, the Blue Ribbon Festival. So the person with the best cow, I guess the blue ribbon, that was a huge, big thing. So those are the kinds of stories I did. But the point really is, the objective is to learn how to do a story, whether it's there or if you're in the big time New York City. So it was a very interesting place to go to, and I really couldn't wait to to get out of there. Then I went to Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania, coal mining area. I worked there for a year and 7 months. Then back to my home state, Connecticut, to a cable station, then to Hartford for years as a health reporter. And then I said, my career is like going down like this. I'm making less money. So I said, well, it's time for me to, I've had this journey, time to do something else. And I love what I'm doing now because I get to use all those skills in communications for a nonprofit.
So all of those jobs actually gave you all the skill set in order to write so beautifully.
Yes, they were all very helpful in that way. Yes, definitely.
Do we have any more questions here? Elisa? Do you have a question?
I will, yes. Hi, Lisa. So, Lisa, if you had to give advice to someone who wanted to start writing, I've always aspired to write. I don't have a degree in journalism or writing. I have a degree in education. We did some writing, but not a lot. But I've often thought about writing some short stories. What advice would you give to someone like me who doesn't have the college experience or the real experience in writing anything more than a memo or a report for school? What advice would you give?
There are quite a few women's organizations, women's writing organizations, and you can join them or just get onto their email list, and they will send you information about workshops. Come on this workshop, or do writing online where they will have like 2 hours. Let's get together on Zoom at noon and we'll write for an hour, and then we'll discuss our writing, and you'll get critiqued. So that's like, there's so many organizations like that. And also there are workshops at conferences, like the Grub Street has Muse in the Marketplace, which I was just instructing there last weekend. But there are conferences. There's one I'd like to go to at some point, but it's in Virginia. They have two. It's in Virginia and Albuquerque. Women's Fiction Writers Association, and you go there and they have workshops, and you're there at these Victorian hotels, and all they do is talk about writing and the craft. And I would start with that. Also the library. I think this library has something. There are some writers groups here. Yeah, there are writers groups. Okay, and the libraries have those too. So I would start there.
Great question, great answer. Let's have another question.
Lisa, when I was reading a little bit about you, I saw that you had also had a diagnosis right in between your mother's and father's diagnoses. And I'm curious, how's your health now?
Yes, I was diagnosed with breast cancer stage 1, actually on my husband's birthday. My husband's right back there, May 1st, and several years ago. And since then, I've been fine. It was stage 1. We took care of that, and I'm on medication. And other breast cancer survivors tell me that it's normal to feel nervous. Every time I'm about to go in for an exam, I'm nervous about it. Concern has come back, has not come back. It's interesting you bring this up right now, because this month is Cancer Survivors Month. Mm-hmm. And it was tough because my mother was sick, my dad's health was failing, I lost my job, and had breast cancer all at the same time. It was and as I said a bit earlier, I felt like the four of us, my sister, me, my mother, and father, had this charmed life for so long. And then when all this hit around 2018, 2019, I said, well, it's all crashing down it was like a train wreck. You could see it coming and you're about to be smashed into the brick wall. That's the way it felt. So I got all of that all at once. So it was tough, but my faith in the Lord, that helped. My Bible study friends, the women in my Bible study, the pastor praying, my mother, she kept saying, Lisa, you're going to be fine. She would say, Lisa, I'm not going to be fine, but you're going to be fine. I said, Mommy, we're both going to be fine. We're both going to get through this. But she didn't make it, but I'm still here. So I'm doing okay.
Would hubby like to ask wifey a question?
It's over here.
This is Alexander, the lucky man who's married to Lisa Braxton, also known as Alex. So, what's it like living with Lisa? Is she always writing, or does she have time for you?
Well, it's good. It's should I hold it?
You can hold it.
Oh, okay. It's we're a good match because I'm a writer too, so we have very exciting days or evenings reading, and I'm in the basement and Lisa's and which is it's interesting because we don't. If one person in the couple is a writer and the other person is not, then the other person will be bored. But if we're both doing our own thing, we don't bore each other because we can sort of we're in our silo for and then we meet every now and then. Hey, how you doing? What's up? And yeah, and because of the house that we have is wonderful because there's a top floor and I'm in the basement, and I could stay there for a while. I mean. If the basement had a bathroom, I would never have any reason. But she's a good writer, and it's great. It's great to have another writer to bounce ideas off of. And I'm working on a book right now. It's very premature, but nevertheless, I got my angle from Lisa, and it's actually working. And it's amazing that the information I had was floating around. And Lisa got tired of hearing me talk about it, and she says, look, just do this. And it worked. So it helps to be a good writer.
Wonderful that you can feed off each other, get ideas, and get permission to pursue those ideas too.
Yeah.
Right.
We're a very boring couple. We don't do anything.
I don't think that's true. I've heard otherwise. Do we have any other questions? Patty?
Hey, Lisa. So I am, you, I'm sure, inspire so many people, and I am in awe of all the achievements that you have done in your life, and so many things that you're involved in, and you continue to be involved in. Can you tell us where the energy comes from? How do you keep up? How do you keep going?
I don't know, but I know as a child I was always bored. I would say to Mom, Mom, I'm just so bored, and I would just follow her around the house as a 3-year-old. She would be doing the laundry in the basement, and I would just follow her all over the place. And then when she would get on the phone, I would pull up my little baby chair and sit next to her and listen to her phone conversations, and then ask her all the different vocabulary words that she was saying. And the mail would come, and I would say, "Oh, what'd you get?" And she'd say, "It was just bills." And I said, "Well, at least you got something, you know." And I think I'm someone who has to stay busy. I just have a lot of things that interest me, and I just like to pursue them. It's just my personality. So I'm sure I'm slowing down because as you get older, you tend to slow down. No, okay. Because right. I'm thinking as soon as I finish my book tour, I can't wait to pull my bicycle out and start writing. So there's always something else to fold in. So yeah, I'm just my personality. I like keeping my mind going on something. But thank you for the question.
Well, it certainly has been going very well. Yes. And I'm sure it's going to continue. So do you have any ideas for a future book?
Yes, I'm working on something. I've been working on it off and on since I was working on it when Mom got sick, then I put it down, and then Dad's issues, I put it down. But I'm working on a novel having to do with characters who live on Beacon Hill. In the 1850s, the African-American neighborhood on Beacon Hill. And it was during the Fugitive Slave Act, and they were enslaved Africans from the South who came up north into Beacon Hill. And there was also slave catchers on horseback. And those are basically the characters, some of the characters. And I want to get back to that probably later this year, I hope to.
And there's a large Black population on Martha's Vineyard. Yes. And we've talked about that. So there's another book.
Yes, there's a book, I forget the name of it now, but there's a book that someone at Emerson wrote. Nantucket is in the part of the title. Wonderful book about 3 women, and there was a huge fire there in the 1700s. I'm not sure, but one of the characters is African American, And I read hers as inspiration for as I begin to write mine, but she's covered that very well, that author. So I'm looking to do the Beacon Hill side of things.
Now, who do you identify with? I'm sure there are authors that you respect and maybe occasionally emulate. Are there any authors that you really admire that have helped you in your craft?
I read so many authors. I can say that my favorite author is Langston Hughes. His ability to write the poetry, plays, and novels, and his volumes of short stories, to the point where I would read some of his short stories and I would start crying because I felt like those characters were so real and the situations were so poignant. So overall, he's my favorite author.
Wonderful. Now, I want to ask Alexander, are you also pursuing those types of topics, or are you on another level, another plane?
Well, what I'm writing is, I'm sorry. What I'm writing is it's nonfiction, and it's a bit of a memoir because a lot of it deals with what I hope to have is a good portion of the book will contain my reflections on. I moved from Virginia. I grew up in Virginia as well, and when I went to school here, I came to school in Boston at BU, thinking that I was getting out of Virginia because it was such a racist. It was a backwards place, and I wanted nothing to do with the South. So I come to Boston, thinking that I'm getting away from slavery for the most part, and I find out that Boston has origins. Slavery originated to some degree in Boston. So, I come here to get away from something that has already had happened here. So,
well, Massachusetts was the first colony, so that's not so surprising, is it? Yeah.
no, it's not surprising at all.
No. Okay. So, any other questions? Hold on.
Other than your personal reflections, obviously, that take place in this book, when you're doing research for this new book, say for Beacon Hill, what's the process of doing the research? I mean, is it libraries? Is it online? Is it just a combination of everything?
It's pretty much everything. I was at the Boston Athenaeum 2 weekends ago because I'm hoping to have a daguerreotype photographer as a main character, or the era just after that. And there is some photo albums from Harriet Hayden, who was the wife of, I forget the man's first name, but they escaped from Kentucky and came up to Beacon Hill, and they lived there for many years, and they were abolitionists. And at the Athenaeum, they have photos from her photo album on display, and they explained a lot of things. So that was part of my research. I've been reading books, I watch things online, talk to other authors, you name it. For me, I'm trying to absorb all kinds of information. I will probably go to the map department at the Boston Public Library in Boston to look at the maps from that era, 1850s, to see what streets were there, so I can have my characters accurately move around the city. So it's all kinds of things, which is just my alley because I love to read and do research. Yes.
Do you have a title for your book, or is
I
that
don't
something
have a
that comes
title.
afterwards?
I don't have a title. I'm working. I think about that, but haven't come up with a title yet.
That's usually the last thing, isn't
Sometimes once you get through the entire book, there's a phrase or something in there that. But with this book, for instance, I had the title long before I had any thoughts about writing this collection. So then I wrote a poem to go along with the title, so it seemed to make sense that, you've got this, where did the title come from? So I wrote a poem that actually people like, and I wrote it to go with the title.
Now, the first book, The Talking Drum, is a nonfiction, but has a lot
It's fiction.
It's
Yes,
fiction.
fiction.
I mean fiction, but it has a lot of nonfiction in it.
Oh, yeah.
Because you're incorporating your experiences with your family. And so this book is a totally different, but they're little poignant scenes that remind me of scenes in the Talking Drum. And it's your style. It's a beautiful style.
Thank you.
And it's a beautifully written book. And I know we're going to look forward to the next one on Beacon Hill, and there are going to be some surprises, I'm sure.
Yes, I hope so. So people
Yes.
will read it.
So I can just say that, are there any more questions?
Oh, you know what? I forgot to say, since I'm up here, I can't take pictures for social media, but if you would, any and all wouldn't mind just pulling your camera out as we're talking, as we wrap this up, and snap, so I can, thank you.
I have a question about the cover. Do authors typically design their cover, or do other people design your covers?
Typically for the cover, if you're with the publisher will choose a cover or give you show you several samples. They typically have final say. So the publisher said, well, since you have all these lovely family photos, Lisa, let's think about putting the photos on the cover. And so she showed me two different concepts, and I like this one better. The other one, I think she had these photos kind of like row, one after the other across. I didn't care for that, but this I like.
Yeah,
I love it.
I was wondering how it came about.
Yes.
And there are more photos of your family up here to look at. So, Lisa, before we end this discussion,
There's
we have one more
another question.
Not so much a question. Lisa, I wanted to say I've read Talking Drums, and then I read this. And I loved this in the different ways, and our lives are kind of scattered and hodgepodge, but you were able to take a theme, and then I loved the music. And you remembered those songs. I knew exactly what you were talking about and where you were at that moment. And then you would do a poem, and then you do a crossword. And it was just so lovely to have all these different venues kind of coming into the same point. And you handled it so beautifully to take all this and to have a single theme. And I really enjoyed that style.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much.
And so, Lisa, do you have any parting words before we end this session?
No, but feel free to. I'll be doing some. I'll sign the book if anyone's interested in purchasing, and or you can order it. Tell your friends about the book, and I want to thank you for your support.
Okay, now how can viewers purchase your book?
They can purchase on Amazon.com or bookshop.org or from the publisher, Sea Crow Press. Just type in
available at Petticoat Junction. Petticoat
Junction. Well, Petticoat Junction goes back a ways.
Okay.
Actually, no. I offered the talking drum, and it was on. They do consignment. It was on display. No one purchased it, so I haven't tried with this one. But I could always go to her and the owner and say, "Can I consign this book?" and see if she's interested.
Okay.
I can do that.
So Lisa will be signing books. You can purchase them for $20 out here if you have a check or cash.
Or Cash App or Zelle.
Whatever that is. Young people will know.
And feel free to have some food. Otherwise, Alex and I will be eating sandwiches for the next month here.
So thank you for coming, everyone here, and to our viewing audience. Thank you for joining us today. And this is Priscilla Almquist Olsen hosting and chatting a fireside chat with no fireplace. Lisa Braxton, author, and we expect wonderful books in the future. Thank you so much for being here, and all of us have enjoyed this presentation.
Thank you.